And okay, we're live. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Palantir Weekly. We're on number 13. Been doing this 13 weeks straight, so it's been very, very, very fun. Happy that everyone is here joining us on a Friday night. We've got Arnaldo all the way from Italy. We've got Dom from the States. I think Nashville. Dom?
30 minutes about south of Nashville. We'll call it Nashville.
Okay, Nashville. And we got Chris from Atlanta, and you got me, Amit from New Jersey. Lots to talk about this week. Main thing is going through these earnings because I know we've been through it this week. If anyone wants their question answered immediately, you can send a super chat and we will answer your questions.
Wait. Before we get started with Palantir, we got to address the elephant in the room.
What's the elephant?
Why do you not like Fight Club? I gotta know. Like, dude, Fight Club is one of the best movies of all time, in my opinion. I really love Fight Club.
You have a bad opinion. Your opinion is bad.
Nah, dude. What about you, Dom? Dom, Fight Club. What do you think?
I like it more than I don't like it. I mean, I won't say it's my top 5 movie, but I like it. It's a good movie.
That's my point. Everyone's acting like it's a top 5 movie. No one.
I would definitely not put it in my top 5, but it's a good movie.
Arnaldo,
Chris,
what about
you? Didn't do it either. So
not my top 5. I found it very interesting because it was something different from what I was expecting. So I watched it without knowing basically anything. So it surprised me. I can't say I liked everything of it, but that I had a nice feeling.
I find that movies.
What did you like? What didn't you like?
Because I love philosophical, introspective, existential movies. And Fight Club like tried to do it, and it didn't really have the impact that I wanted to do. So like when I mean tried to, I get the whole he worked a 9 to 5 and he's dealing with the absurdity of life. I get it. I understand it. I took philosophy in high school. I really understand the message. I don't think the movie executed it that well.
No, man. I mean, dude,
a tough critic to please on movies.
Yeah, man.
All I hear is the explosions and guy gets girl.
What's a top 5 movies for you, Amit?
Inception, Dark Knight, Wolf of Wall Street, Interstellar. Those 4 are like.
You can tell he's thought about that question. He rattled it off like that.
So you prefer the Wolf of Wall Street?
What'd you say?
So you prefer the Wolf of Wall Street rather than Fight Club?
1000%. I mean, just entertainment.
I didn't really like it.
You didn't like Wolf of Wall Street?
Well, I liked certain parts of it, but after a certain point, I got bored.
It is long. They could have cut at least 25 minutes off of it.
The first part was very interesting, but then after seeing Leonardo sliding, I was okay. I already seen this.
Yeah, no, I'm also a Leo fanboy, so that definitely got me. Ryan says someone's a Christopher Nolan fanboy. That is also correct.
The thing about the fight, I like The Big Short over that one for sure.
Dude, I love The Big Short. That's one of my top favorite movies. Yeah,
that's in my top.
Good. Well, what I was about to say, that Fight Club thing, you know what happened so randomly? It's like right before we started the show. I was telling Tom, I was like, oh yeah, I was like trying to think of scenes for a potential video we're thinking of, and I looked at Fight Club for inspiration. By the way, I don't think Fight Club was that good. And as soon as I said that, they like changed the direction of how the show was going to start. They were like, no, we got to start with this. And then it became this meme, I guess. But I stick very, 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 very true to that statement. I don't think it's true. And I think all of us have to stick true to the statement that we made months ago when we told ourselves that buying Palantir at $24 was a hell of a deal. We're like, fuck, this is a bargain. Well, it turned out to be a bargain, all right. But for those on the other side of the marketplace, Palantir had their earnings. They dropped about 30% roundabout when they got to about 650, 670. Started the week at around 11. It's pretty rough. Earnings call I thought was actually very good. There's some really good positives that we want to talk about today, but stock price did not live up to that. Let me read the super chat real quick, then we'll get into it. Emmanuel, thank you for the super chat. Question for Arnaldo. I don't know what Dove la competition. I think he's asking, is there any competition? Shout out to Arnie for waking up at 5. Oh, it's 5 a.m. right now for you, Arnie?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So you can answer that question. I don't know what it means.
He's referring to a clip I made with him and Christian, where we were talking about Cathie Wood selling Palantir because of competition in the government space. And my real answer was a question. Where's the competition? Where?
Data walk. Data walk. Everyone knows data walk is coming for all of y'all. So
Yeah.
you just wait until data walk goes public.
All right. Well, let's get into it. Let's start off before we get into the deep nitty-gritty of the actual earnings. Let's talk about the like sort of the raw reactions. Dom, let's start off with you. When the stock price fell, how did you feel about it Monday, Tuesday at its lowest?
So I thought we would hit right around 775, maybe 750, no lower than that. So I executed a maxed out my Roth and my wife's Roth at 750. So put 12 grand down. Now I'm back to building up my dry powder, but I was saving that. That was my tax money to, hey, get that every January, get taxed more up front. So I have that to guaranteed put towards it. And then I was sad when it went to 650. So I always have this problem with wanting to get at the lowest price. And I'm like, surely you can't go lower than this, and right. It's a lesson I learn all the time.
Arnie, your initial thought from the stock price jump or don't go down.
I had a similar reaction. I was secretly hoping for that to happen because I was already expecting there were some headwinds, in particular in terms of margins and in terms of SPAC impact. So I was kind of hoping to see a bad reaction. I didn't expect that bad reaction. And my first thinking was, wow, minus 20%. So something really horrible must have happened. And probably most of the people, I include myself into it, saw the presentation, the earnings release, knowing that the price was dropping much. So I was, okay, what's wrong with that? But I didn't really find anything really alarming. There were some signs that required more explanation, but in my opinion, they were okay. There is just a data point into the direction they're heading to. And we know that businesses are not that linear, that you can expect every quarter to have exactly the same growth. So it is good to have some movements, and it's better to understand, okay, let's understand the full picture rather than saying, oh, they're lowering the guidance for about 3%, everything must be bad. So in the end, I was excited. I doubled down my position. Unfortunately, I did it at 7.5 as Dom. It was nice to see it going down from there, but overall, I'm happy.
Chris, your thoughts when you saw the price drop?
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of some of the stuff that I had bought really early, like before Palantir, and seeing it drop 70%. That's one of the reasons why I just DCA. When everything was going down, I was comfortable because I was like, oh, my average is going to go down this week, and that's what happened. Like Wednesday, when my my alert just goes off to buy, I was able to buy it cheaper. My average is still way higher than what do you call it? Than what the price is right now. But this is one of the benefits of DCAing, right? Where you'd never try to time that bottom. It just becomes like almost a part of, hey, it's going to just be done and bought for you. And like I said, it's one of those things that now I'm looking at my average and it just keeps coming lower and lower and lower. Whereas I didn't make the mistake of just going in because I have like cash sitting on the side. And there are times where I'm just like, man, should I just go in, all in?
Well, and, to your point,
yeah.
750, had I been smart and just said, okay, max on each Roth is 6K. So if I think that 750 is the lowest, I'll do 3 and 3, and let's save the other 3 and 3 to see if it goes to 6 or 650. And I would have got in on that. But you just, there's that other side where you're like, I don't know if it'll ever get back to 750. I mean, this is insane prices. Like, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Investing, especially depending on what your temperament is, if you're the type of person, like for me, I like to look at the market all the time. Like I'll just randomly look at it throughout the day. If you have that kind of mentality and it gives you that stress and that agita, the best thing to do is create a strategy where you're able to kind of like feel that you can be in it for a prolonged period of time. Like right now, if I'm using a really large position and I see it go down really quickly, then I'm going to feel like crap about it. But because of my DCA principle, it gives me a lot of like pauses and a lot of rest and relaxation. So, and that's the thing. Anytime I've ever had losses in the past, majority of them because I've sold out early on a position because I couldn't stomach to see that loss. Whereas now, because of my DCAing, if it goes up, I celebrate because it's like, oh my God, my stock portfolio is up. If it goes down, I celebrate because, I got to buy it cheaper this week. So I'm getting that what do you call it, that endorphin high every single time. So now when I do like invest and I look at a thesis and I say, okay, I think this company is going to do really well over the next 10 years, I'm not literally committed to that many shares. It's always like, okay, yeah, the company is growing and my share count is growing. Imagine all the people that could have been DCAing in Tesla in 2010. Instead of trying to time the bottom, they just kept buying shares. By the time that they got to a point where Tesla had that inflection point, dude, they were amazing. Now, on the other hand, imagine they had taken their entire life savings, put it into Tesla and not seen it grow at all. Like over almost 8 years when it was public, it didn't grow nearly, so the entire time they would have been like, well, look at my position. I see it constantly going, up and down, but it's not like, really giving me that high that I need. And so they would have sold out of it too early. So I think, like I said, that's one of the virtues of DCAing, especially with a company like Palantir, where I think the growth prospects are going to take much longer than what a lot of people are thinking. They're not anywhere near their inflection point to the point where they're going to be valued at $1 trillion anytime soon. Even a $50 billion valuation is kind of excessive, to be honest with you, especially in a rising rate environment. So, like I said, everyone has to figure out a strategy that they feel comfortable investing, because a lot of investing, half of it is doing good research. The other half is controlling yourself from making a mistake, right? And controlling your emotions, controlling your like bodily senses to like go fucking crazy, basically,
No, you're right. It's that endorphin. Like, I was so excited at 750. I'm like, oh my gosh, I my cost basis was like 19 or something before this, and I'm like, to Mitt's point, we were all talking here months ago, like, this will never go below $10, But there's so many things that are happening in today's market and world in general, compounding on each other, that I think Ryan said in the chat, give it 10 years from now, we'll all be laughing because we'll have all made a good decision by holding and getting in at these prices, which is true. You got to know what your temperament is and how long you're willing to hold.
Yeah, I agree. I think I did not buy this recent dip just because I bought a lot at 1080. For me, a lot was another $1,200 worth. My average is at 1966. I'm very skeptical of the rally we had today. Obviously, we went from like
I asked about that.
Yeah, 620 to, and we'll talk about it more in depth. We went from 620 to like, I think we closed at 830 or 825. I'm very skeptical. There's no reason why this should have happened today. So, I mean, I think we're going back lower. Sachin said in our group chat that we should be mentally prepared for $3, $4. And I think he's right about that. I mean, it definitely makes sense that it could definitely get there. How did you guys feel about Carp's monologue going into the earnings? So I heard it was 8 minutes. I mean, I have some thoughts on it, but overall, I thought he tried to make the story of Palantir more evident. I think maybe some of the sentences were a little mistimed, given he probably knew the market was not going to like earnings, so it kind of just sounded a little weird. But let's start with Arnie. How'd you kind of feel about Carp's monologue?
Well, my personal feeling is that everything Carp says, I want to hear him very carefully. I like his style. I think Carp is what makes Palantir unique. So I personally appreciate him. I'm aware that people on Wall Street have a completely different mindset, like is really the opposite mental framework. Therefore, everything that is out of the standard is something that pisses them off. And Wall Street people are generally used to that kind of CEO that starts the conference underlining, oh yes, everything went up because of this reason, went down for this reason. So very on the business, while Carp is on the philosophical side. I think that helps long term. Short term, we know that analysts don't like Palantir unless you fully embrace Palantir vision, philosophy. You probably think, okay, this guy is just weird. I don't like him. I personally love hearing him. I think he is very smart, deep, and knows how to empower people doing their best. So I think he's the best CEO Palantir can have. We need to accept that his way of behaving will be not as appreciated for a long time.
Dom, your thoughts on his monologue?
I was fine with like Arnie said. I mean, anytime he speaks, I want to hear. I was excited that he was presenting. I think to Arnie's point around how Wall Street receives Carp and Palantir in general, I do believe this is a company or a stock that you have to actually have some expertise in this area to really appreciate the differentiation and the uniqueness and competitive advantages that they have in the market, because then you really get it. I could understand why it's hard for some people, who don't work in software and all these other things, not to say they can't study up and dive into. They put tons of material on for you to have a high level of appreciation. But with some of the stuff what they've done with Apollo and some of the other things coming with the pay-as-you-go service and their approach and how they can make these customized operating systems. One of my buddies said he was at a conference with Microsoft, and he said, what about moving to the edge and people like Snowflake or Palantir that create custom operating systems for enterprises? Doesn't that kind of flip the cybersecurity game all on its head when you could have, all these different tailored operating systems for organizations, which they're building on top of the ontology? It kind of is a direct competition to someone like Microsoft, who's a centralized operating system. And he's exactly right. And the Microsoft guy gave him an evil glare. And so I just think, you really have to understand what they're doing. I watched their video they just posted about their trying to get people to want to work for them, just like their experience of, they believe in a culture with small teams and small teams running customer projects, like big projects. Like they were listing all the Airbus projects, the NHS and everything else. And working in the software industry for almost 20 years now, I can tell you it's a lot easier to move nimbly and flexible to drive fast results when you work in a small amount of teams and to make adjustments and fail early than in a big, giant organization where things just are not going to move as fast. There's going to be a lot of, conflict and who agrees with what. But when you have a small team and it lies on their responsibility, that just made me really think about all the new 40 customers they added and more coming. I think they're going to keep accelerating.
Chris, your thoughts on Carp's monologue?
So I'm going to get flamed for this, but I've accepted it. I practiced this.
Spicy.
So I think Alex Carp is really good at being a professor. All right. His entire background is in getting a philosopher's mind. When you're a professor, that's what you're doing. You're not trying to literally build something. You're trying to get other people to build for you, right? So imagine a professor right now going to college, in college, like explaining theory to people, saying, okay, here's all the stuff that you need theoretically to change the world. It's your job to change the world. So in that front, I think Alex Carp does a great job. Where I think he fails is where his lack of business sense comes into the picture. All right. You cannot keep having structural changes in your organization and think that every single time people are going to be forgiving about it. Okay. Even he's admitted that they've made mistakes. Like they had products that were way ahead of time, back in 2012, and they weren't able to capitalize on it.
They've pivoted. Are you saying the CEO has a lack of business sense?
Yeah, totally.
How does he a CEO then?
So that's the thing. He's a founder, right? He's a founder CEO. So basically, he started this with an idea, and he was able to raise capital and other people to build on that vision, which I think
Peter and company wanted him to be CEO. They went to Europe to recruit him.
Well, here's the thing. So Alex Carp, they recruited him, right, to basically guide the vision for the company, right? Initially, they just wanted someone to kind of like hold the line. They weren't exactly hoping that he was going to be the CEO, right? They were like, okay, we need someone that's going to be the adult in the room. That's what they've said, right? Which Carp more than did. But one thing, like I said, Carp makes people feel warm and fuzzy. I think in terms of retaining employees, getting really smart employees to work on challenging tasks, I think Alex Carp by far is really good at that, right? Getting products to a point where they're able to develop them. But outside of developing them, you also need to sell them, and you need to sell them to the wide masses. All right. So when you think about a business,
I don't think that's his role, though. I think that's the COO and CFO. Like Sankar should be running that part of the business, right? Like that should be his bread and butter. And what Carp's doing is he's keeping a culture and talent there because of what he's fostered. And that's the leadership he brings.
And normally I would agree with you. But if you think about it, they said that Carp was the one-man sales operation the entire time, right?
Right.
So which chief executive is going out there trying to look for deals, right? Trying to get deals done. The entire time that they could have been developing a sale, you're telling me a software company has only started developing a sales force after 17 years of being in existence? They should have been developing a sales force 5 years ago when they actually started making these products. These are the kinds of things that a business person knows, like, hey, we can't build products but not have a sales team to go along with it way before time. Right now, they're behind the 8 ball. No matter how good your product is, now you got to get people sales trained. You got to get in people with industry relationships that are going to cost you money. Whereas guess what? If you had done this 5 years ago when you were still much younger, before you went public, right now you would have been growing like crazy and the valuations would have made a lot more sense, right? Right now, they're already behind the 8 ball. And guess what? The one thing I see right now that I really hope Palantir really takes to heart is that there are competitors out there that are gunning for the same space. In VMware is doing its job. They're a multinational business. They have great leadership. They're targeting some of the same spaces that Palantir is already in. Salesforce is doing the exact same thing, right? A good CEO knows when to get in, develop something, and do it way ahead of time so that, guess what? You are that 0 to 1 before anyone else can get in.
But Chris, the 0 to 1, do you think Carp genuinely believed they were already that monopoly that they didn't need to do the sales, and that's kind of his business sense, but it just wasn't the correct one in this case?
That's what, like, I feel like he didn't care. Like, I feel like he already felt like they were at that point and was actually against wanting to hire a sales force for so long, but then it kind of came evident over time that you have to.
He was wrong about it. He was wrong. Yeah. They didn't sell the product as much as he thought.
And what surprised me about it is that you have Peter Thiel, who literally wrote the book on why you need to have a software sales team, and you're not listening to the guy.
Well, so that's what makes me wonder, how much is Peter involved in this operation?
I'm glad you say that. That is exactly right.
Because I've always thought about that. I've read the book several times, and I've just always wondered, when you read his book, you're like, some things I see his fingerprints on, but on the operational stuff and like the go-to-market, I don't see his fingerprints on.
No, and even the culture that's there, it's not as Peter Thielish as you would believe, right? It's more Alex Carpish, right? And what's funny is sometimes when I actually talk to some of the employees and everything else, they have so much disdain for Peter Thiel, but have so much respect for Alex Carp, right? So I can kind of like see that, you know what, this company is built around the philosophies of Alex Carp, not Peter Thiel. Even though part of the same company. They're on the same board of directors. They're both the same thing. Guess what? Each one still thinks independently, and that's usually a good thing. It's like they're having two sides to a coin, right? I think Peter Thiel at this point should be more involved in some of the business decisions in growing Palantir, because if people like Joe Lonsdale and Peter Thiel were more involved with that part of it, I think Palantir could do really well, because guess what? They know how to nurture a business, whereas Alex Karp knows how to nurture an idea. So that's what I would say. Some people are really good at business operations. A good example of someone who's really good at business operations is the CEO of Snowflake. Look at them. It's a columnar database. All right. Everyone right here. It's a columnar database. All right. It's not that special, but he knows how to sell. He knows how to get it into the hands of the people. And guess what? That's not his one company that he has been successful at. This is his second one. He built ServiceNow to be one of the monsters out there right now.
It's actually his third. He did Data Domain as well.
And Data Domain before it was acquired. So if you look at it, there are people that are serial producers, right? This is Alex Karp's first rodeo in 17 years, and he hasn't proven or lived up to the idea of getting us to the point where it's going to be super profitable for us. I am in it because I believe in the technology, not so much that I believe in Alex Karp's leadership. I like listening to him. I think it's like listening to a college professor, but that doesn't mean that I like him in terms of developing the business.
Arnie, I'll get to you in a second. What I was going to say on that is, I think what you said about when Karp is Karp is a philosophical salesman in terms of, and philosophical salesman to me is like getting people to buy into your vision and like fund it. So like when he was talking to the CIA's venture capital firm and all these private investors over the past 17 years, he probably sold them a vision through his philosophical speaking that got them to believe in the 0 to 1 philosophy at the conjunction of protecting Western democracy and then the actual technology, all that stuff. And he was able to put a narrative together. And that works for raising capital. And that works for getting people to believe in the vision. That works for recruiting people away from Google and Facebook. But that doesn't work for actually selling like a product and getting dollars in, because that is political. That's relationship based. That's like, if Microsoft knows these people, their sales teams are going to get a better inning to actually close the deal. So that's where you need a real sales force. And I think you're absolutely correct that he has that vision, but it's just a question of now actually developing that sales force. Arnie, your thoughts on this idea that Karp doesn't really have business sense when it comes to selling product?
I think he has a business sense, but he has different priorities. His first priority is preserving the culture. He wasn't really fan of the idea of getting listed, because he knows that if you become listed, you have much pressure to start growing fast. And if you grow fast, you risk of losing your identity. So as a CEO, his main focus is, okay, how can I preserve the culture? Our culture is unique. He always insists on that. And I believe it. For sure, things are not easy at the beginning, because this is the first. Imagine after you're private for so long, you develop a certain mind frame. And now as a public company, you need to change everything. You have a pressure quarter by quarter, while in the past they could focus only on delivering the best products they thought for their clients, being a commercial or government. And now they have the pressure of the slowdown in the government business for a quarter. And probably if you ask him, hey, what do you think about that? He says, where's the problem? But
unfortunately,
when you're listed,
yeah. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
When you're listed, you have all the eyes on you. So that is positive, because it generates some pressure for sure. Seeing him kind of frustrated, I love the comment I received on Twitter, underlining that he seemed frustrated, but that could be a good sign, because if you're smart and frustrated, you become smarter. And I believe Palantir could get smarter. I think we are gradually seeing Palantir getting smarter, despite the business is not something like a Tesla. You sell a Tesla, you have a good product, you sell it, and you immediately see the results. The results we can see in the short time It's just the number of clients increasing, the existing clients expanding, but still, it takes time.
Yeah, that's what I was going to echo was, and I said this in the video that I'll post later this weekend. We really haven't given them a lot of grace. And what I mean by that, I know the price has gone down significantly, but when you look at Foundry and them being now, September, it'll be 2 years of public company. The product is already standing on its own. The technology is there. Most companies don't have an exponential great product that is 10x better than a lot of things out there. If they can continue to modularize and split that up and find new customer bases to go into, I think they'll be fine from that perspective. But to Arnie's point, they are getting smarter. They are figuring out how they have to play the game. And they haven't yet hired top sales talent. Like, imagine when they're profitable and have more cash to throw at salespeople in other situations. They're just rolling, like they're just getting the momentum, but they've already got the hard part already knocked out of the way, which is the product.
So a couple of more things, and I'm not trying to bash on Alex Carp or Palantir or anything else, but to Arnie's point, culture doesn't pay the bills, right? Cultures can only retain employees for a certain period of time before those employees are going to get frustrated and say, look, I'm wasting my time, I'm wasting my youth in trying to help you build your idea, and it's not going anywhere. Majority of the reason why they actually even went public is because they had an uprising among their own employees to say, listen, we want to unlock liquidity, right? Even they've admitted and said, look, if it was up to me, we wouldn't have gone public. But guess what? We had tons of employees who wanted to unlock that liquidity. Well, guess what? That's what happened, right? So the question is, Alex Carp can set a good vision, but at this point, you got to pivot I want to say pivot your business, but you got to be reasonable about your businesses. Look at this whole SPAC nonsense, right? For a company that does really good with data analysis and figuring things out, how could they not have figured out that most of these SPACs are cash flow negative and they would be burnt out by within a year or two?
What do you mean by most of these SPACs?
Most of the SPACs that they invested in, look at the prices on them right
now.
Yeah,
but that's just the macro. That's not their
No. That's not just the macro. That's not just the macro. Because
that's not the macro. All these companies are down because Wall Street hates SPACs right now. They hate growth companies. You're telling me Wejo is a horrible company?
Not all of them, but majority of them, I would be surprised to see that them lasting another year or two. Mainly because you look at their cash.
Look at the financials. That's what you think he's saying is financially they're not stable enough without going back and getting more money.
Exactly. Right now, they're in a position where most of them are burning through their cash, right? Yeah. Which means that their pipe is going to be done by the end of the year. Unless they go into the debt markets, they're done. They're going to be gone, right? And that's a huge.
I disagree. I don't know why you're saying that. Like, are you saying all the SPACs are just burning? Like,
I'm not saying absolutes of all. I'm saying some. For me, very, a decent amount. But
a decent amount of the 19 SPACs are going to go out of business in 2 years. That's what you guys are saying.
That's what I'm saying. Not these guys. I'm saying 70% of them are gone. I say 70% are gone.
It was a calculated bet that they're still going to make money on this overall. It's like picking your own portfolio, right? At the end of the day, in 10 years, your top 2 or 3 positions are what carry your portfolio. I believe Wejo is one of those companies that will be one of those top 3. I also believe that, yes, this is the reason. If you look at the financials and earnings, this is why the operating margins went down and everything looked down, because they've had to claim those losses on sales for the SPACs for the last 2 quarters. And there's actually still another $126 million they have to claim. I believe they're going to claim all of that next quarter because they said their operating margins were going to be at the lowest it's ever been, 20%. If they're smart, they would just get through that, get through the red. And then after that, they will be profitable. But they also got customers that, if they can stay alive, will continue to build and continue to pay them. So I think it'll be a net wash 5 years from now. I mean, right now it looks bad, but I think with Wejo and some of the other companies, they only needed like 2 or 3 of those to really thrive. Like, I think Sarcos Robotics could be something very interesting in the future.
So we are at this point gonna have to use a death watch and see how many of these die.
Hey, that'd be fun.
Yeah,
we've got that.
Let me share the screen right now, showing the SPACs. Because when you guys are saying they're gonna die, I'm just like, hold on, like, are y'all sure? This is dailypalantir.com.
Cash. They'll have to get more cash. So okay, out of these, who are you?
So Tritium's gonna be here. Yeah. So for me, Tritium will be here. Ouija will be here.
Yeah.
Babylon will be here. Atheorant, I don't know if they had some decent earnings. They will definitely be here in the digital advertising space. Sarcos will be here. Those are my 5.
Rigetti,
the rest of these guys. I mean, Energy Vault, I think will be. Bird, I don't think it's fucking gonna be here. Bird's gonna fly away. Bird's not gonna be here.
I definitely think Rigetti will be here. That's the quantum computing company.
Okay, so we got 6. Chris, do you disagree with any of my 5?
No.
Okay, so we got Rigetti. Well, we'll trust Dom. Energy Vault. I mean, that's a bet, but like, if they, I want to put Energy Vault. Lilium is. I think they're gonna get fucking sued out of existence if they can't get the plane to fly. So we don't know about them.
What happened with Embark? I think their stock price like crashed, if I remember right. But their CEO is sharp as a whip.
Faraday would
be the one that I think definitely is going down. Like the Faraday's
So here's a quote from the Wolf of Wall Street. Here's a quote from Wolf of Wall Street. Don't judge me by my winners, judge me by my losers, because I have so few, right? I would say I'm judging the SPAC decisions based on companies like Faraday, right? What did Palantir see in Faraday to say, hey?
I mean, I get what you're saying is like, why even, like, what did they see that was so,
Right.
But you can't pick them all. You can't pick them all winners. They only needed a couple of these to take off,
Wait, Arnie, can you explain a little bit about Faraday? Do you know anything about them?
No. Well, apart from knowing what they do, I'm kind of out. I'd just like to say that this SPAC saga was very weird at the beginning, especially since I worked when I was an analyst. I had to analyze many SPACs. There was the SPAC spread in the Italian market as there was the other year in the US market. I would say that 99% of the SPACs are not good investments. Are great tools.
They're shit.
Not because all the companies are shit, but the way a SPAC starts already sets you the mood. And what I mean is that SPACs are great for the promoters. If they are great for the promoters and maybe for the company receiving the money at a huge valuation, it means that they are not good for investors. At least what we are getting here is that they're not only investing money, but they will receive some payments. They're understanding company industries where they are not in yet. And for a company like Palantir, if you think of it, how important it is to map possibly every sector. And I think what they wanted to show is not much about the potential gain they could have by investing in these companies, but also to give a signal to companies maybe thinking of, maybe we can use a Palantir Foundry for our operations. If Palantir can show that regardless of the industry, regardless of a sector, wherever you are, regardless of the size, you can benefit from Palantir. For sure, in terms of a financial decision, it is a disaster. I thought it would have been a disaster since I seriously had to analyze once in detail, after all the SPAC acquisition was done, how dilution there would be, and it was crazy number. I don't remember the precise number, but at the end of all the deal, the investors would have a very tiny percentage of a company they paid a very high price. This is in general how the SPAC works. But since they called it like strategic investment, I want to think there was more than that. For sure, we don't fully understand it. We just see the financial hit. which was kind of predictable. I think their go-to-market strategy is weird, but I think they need to show that Palantir could be used for any case, for any size. So it's like when AWS started, they needed to show, okay, you want to build a startup, go and start with our cloud. It could benefit you. So weird move, probably doesn't work well in terms of financial results. I think there is much more than we see. And I would hope to see them doing something strategical again. Now the market is depressed, because if you did it when the market was up, why don't you use the cash you have now to do something similar? I saw Snowflake has Snowflake Ventures. So that would be very beneficial in my opinion.
Yeah, same thing with Salesforce. Salesforce Ventures is amazing. Like they've been Salesforce Ventures has invested in some of the greatest companies out there right now. And that's the thing with Palantir too. But the fact that they went into the SPAC game, it didn't, like I said, it didn't sit well with me. And on top of that, what ended up happening was among all the Wall Streeters, like people who actually invested, who actually like are big money managers, they looked at it and said, from an analyst standpoint, like these SPAC things don't make sense. What is Palantir? I wouldn't say hiding, but what are they not telling us? Right. And that's where a lot of them took their hands off. Now, the one thing we are seeing is a lot of them getting back in, because now from a valuation standpoint, all those SPAC losses are already in, right? So they're already in the mix. So it's not like Palantir can go further down in its SPAC losses, right? At this point,
they haven't sold all their shares. They still have 126 million they have to sell.
Yeah, but most of those, they're going to end up getting the cash flows back by the end of
yeah. There will be some way. Like that's my thing is like only one needs to work. Like let's just say I think everyone's in agreement. Weejo is one of the most interesting ones, right? So if Weejo takes off and that becomes a real, even just say a $10 billion market cap company down the road, the investment paid off. It wipes all those other losses away. Now we have to sit there and watch it develop. That's not going to happen right away. And I think that kind of ties us all back to the theme of, people like saying that we're just all bag holders. It's not, but we got a long haul to go.
Yeah, but now, Dom, the risk is all gone. You see what I mean? Like the risk of the SPACs putting a dent in Palantir, that's gone now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
we're
now
not going to be getting involved in any more of that. Yeah.
Right. And also they've already taken the most of the hits on it. So now all the stuff that happens to Palantir, all that risk is done. If you're telling me Palantir now, to me right now is a better time to buy Palantir than ever before, because now majority of that operations risk that it took on with some of the SPAC stuff, that's gone. This Ukraine thing, that has been like the best thing to happen to Palantir. I'm not going to say, it's a good thing for humanity. I feel for the Ukrainians, but in terms of, hey, if you're one side of your business is all about providing intelligence so you can make better operational decisions, a war in Ukraine versus someone like the Russians is probably the best area where you're going to be able to make a ton of money. You're going to be able to show off your product, which is Gotham, to a ton of countries, not just the Ukrainians, but to Polish, to the Lithuanians, to the French, to the Germans. All this stuff that they've been saying that, hey, you're going to need us 5 years from now. Guess what? That got compressed into the present because of this Russia thing. So right now we're seeing that slowdown in what is that thing called, government revenue. But I think over the next 2-3 years, it's going to explode, because all these European countries, they're going to say, look, whatever the Ukrainians did to win, we need to get some of that. And I have a feeling a lot of that has to do with Palantir and providing that data intelligence framework, especially from satellites and AI to figure out where the Russians are, where the tanks are. Integrating that into like battlefield decisions is probably helping the Ukrainians stay afloat right now. Because Did you
guys see Tom's video on the $504 million that is going to be disposed of this year of RPO revenue. So they have 1.2 billion of RPO revenue that is not been accounted for yet as far as recognized revenue. And they plan on recognizing 42% of that as invoice revenue this year in the next 12 months. So that's where in the video I made earlier, I don't see how they don't make $2 billion or beat $2 billion in revenue when they already did 446 this past quarter for Q1. Add the 542 or 504 in there. And I mean, you know, if they even just keep even keel with what they're at, they'll beat that.
For the SPAC revenue, they did say they're going to get 30 million per quarter from the SPACs, right? So, so that means that's revenue coming from the SPACs, irregardless of them selling their equity positions in them, right? That's just money that SPACs are paying them for Foundry. So even if they take the L on the equity position, at least they're getting the revenue. Okay, so now it's just a question of if
Ryan asked, is the funds committed for? Yes, those 1.2 billions committed for. So that they're going to choose to recognize half of that revenue in the next 12 months.
Yeah. So as long as the L they take on the actual equity value of their SPACs matches or hopefully doesn't beat the revenue they're getting from the SPACs, then it would be a wash. I guess we'll see how this spot. Yeah, Black Sky, I know you're seeing in the chat. I think that one's a good one. It's just a question of like, are they the winners? I mean, I was bullish on the SPACs because when I see Carp talk about it, and again, I think this goes to Chris' points about you get philosophically enthralled in what he says. You know, he like had this whole narrative for 5 minutes about why you have to do stuff small, you have to prove yourself to the industry. And the girl that asked him the question, she was a Palantir employee, and he was like walking her through this. And that kind of got me understanding, okay, this is what they're doing with the SPACs. In reality, they might have just been buying revenue because they needed something in 2020 when they were DPOing. So, okay, we'll see how that happens.
Good chat stuff if you want to call out some of your other viewers. Just they've had some good questions and comments.
Palantir low will be $5 USD, which did you see? Yeah, at $5, people are going to sell a lot. What else do we have in the comments? Let's do. Sean did a great video today about the sales cycle. I recommend everyone watching this. He's deep into data analytics and sales. So his argument is that this might happen a lot more sooner if they can start getting into some certain doors. Insane dilution while investing in SPACs was recklessness. If they had the money to invest, why did they issue shares to employees instead of cash? Unacceptable behavior by Palantir. What's the response to this?
So I think that right there is the SPC was actually a great thing. All right. And let me explain. Right now, all those employees in the last 2 years that got RSUs at $26, $27, guess what? Palantir recognized that as a cost, but it only paid half technically in terms of equity right now. Right.
They're going to have to stay if they want to catch that money.
Exactly. Right. All the new
Chris, can you explain RSU exactly? What does that mean?
So basically, it's like, okay, Amit, you're going to get $50,000 for signing up to work for me. And, you know, you're going to get 50,000 every year. So you're going to get 50,000 in, let's say, 2022, 23, 24, 25. But guess what? You don't get all that money up front. It vests over time. So you have to stay.
4 years.
Yep. And typically 4 years. So you have to stay all 4 years in order to get any of that money. If you leave, that money does not come to you. That money stays with me. Right. So that's number one. Number two, they assign those shares to you based on the average of that quarter or that whatever the term of that contract is. So if I'm supposed to distribute 50,000 to you for the year and the stock is trading at 50, right? You're only going to get 1,000 shares, right? If the stock is trading at $5, you're only going to get, you're going to get 10,000 shares, right? So you can see how if you got 1,000 shares last year because Palantir was worth, let's say, $25,000, right? And you got 2,000 shares. Right now, what are those 2,000 shares worth in just for you? And not to mention, you had to pay tax on what it was worth when it was still trading at 25. Right. So that's where Palantir says, okay, the SBC will motivate employees to stay with us and stay with us for a longer period of time. Right. Because now they're being personally committed to us. A lot of the employees at Palantir, their total comp looks really high. They're like 300,000 plus, right? Some of them, even for a forward deployed engineer, it's like 250,000. But that's mainly because majority of the money that they're getting is in equity. They're getting maybe 80 to 120,000 in actual pay, in cash pay. So all the expenses that you're seeing from Palantir, majority of them are non-cash expenses, which are getting lopped into the SBC. But the one benefit is if the stock price goes down, that SBC actually saved you money because you weren't burning cash. If I pay you, Amit, $200,000, that's just $200,000 that's gone. But if I said I was going to give you $200,000 in shares, right, and those shares drop off.
But what about the dilution? Like, how does that reconcile with the fact that the SBC is a good thing?
So imagine being allocated at $25, right? You're only going to get 1,000 shares. If I paid you in cash instead of shares, guess what? That money just would have went through the door, right? So that's the key right there that you have to remember.
And they are reducing their SBC. They reduced it by 25%, I believe, this go round. So they are reducing that. That was something I was heavily looking at to see if they keep they did that for like the last 3 quarters. Of reducing the RSU or the stock-based compensation. And then to Chris's point, it definitely incentivizes you to stay because you're not going to sell out or sell those shares for half what they're worth. And the other piece is the CEO of Upstart made a good comment on his interview he had with Bill Brewer. He said, we really were wondering if we wanted to do stock-based compensation or not, or pay out big salaries. And he said, the risk of getting the wrong people hired into your organization by paying out big salaries and not stock-based compensation is very likely. So by doing stock-based compensation, you have a better chance of hiring people that are in it for the long haul for the vision.
Yeah, and they can pip you out. That's the other thing too. Like it's a term in tech. Performance improvement plan. They could put you in a performance improvement plan. You don't live up to the expectations. Boom, you're out of here. You know.
Yeah.
Well, the risk is then if now the stock price stays low for a long time, because that creates a vicious cycle where the company needs to pay a lot, maybe providing more cash, alternatively issuing a lot of shares. So let's say Palantir stays there for many years at this range. That would have that would act as a headwind for investors, not only because the stock is down, but also because to keep those and the new employees and the renewal of the previous RSU plans, they need to issue more shares to provide the same dollar amount package. So,
but
here
but
is
Arnie, they could pay cash. They could pay more in cash now, you know, as opposed to paying in equity, which is already so low. They could just say, you know what, in terms of compensation, we'll give you more cash. But I will say this, everyone that I've spoken to that they're like super jealous of anyone starting this year at Palantir because they're going to get a ton of RSUs at a really cheap price, you know.
What was a slide that you guys found that was memorable in this pitch deck? If you guys remember one, or
I like the appendix one.
The appendix, okay.
Yeah, when you go to keep going. That one, right there. Nope, that one. That next one down. So the usage-based pricing was something I'd never seen them talk about, and you know, from the contract piece, what this allows you to do is all of a sudden get customers to get their hands on it and not have to have a big stake in it. So if you start attacking the developers within organizations and get them using this, I think that could speed up the acquire stage for them quite a bit. And then the other bullet point I was happy to see was it also enables the GSI partners. So for those in the software world, GSI partners are like your big consultants like Deloitte, Accenture. I don't even know if Booz Allen technically is one. They're more of a security partner, but there's a lot of different consulting partners who do these Endava's the one. So it allows them to then be as consultants to use the technology to prove out problem solving and get Palantir in the door. And I would assume IBM and their Salesforce and AWS's Salesforce will also be using this kind of usage-based model, which is great just to get people in.
I agree. Can we talk about this governmental stuff? They did not include the number of clients that they got from government, which
3.
was, that was the biggest red flag to me. I didn't like that.
I mean, they already have a majority of the entire government, right? Like where they would expand is in other countries. Like,
yeah, but that's just an excuse at the end of it. Like it's kind of valid in Kathy's argument that they're not getting governmental clients, right? That's the part that I was like, that kind of sucks.
Well, there's still a whole bunch of RPO revenue for government clients. If you look at the 10Q, that's still not claimed. So I just have a feeling we're coming up on government buying season. And we also have all the Ukraine stuff to recognize. And I don't think our world's getting any easier. I definitely don't think it'll always be at 16% by any means.
I bet. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Arnie. Go ahead.
I would like to highlight 2 things. First, we are making a tough comparison because comparing a number with 76% year-on-year is obviously difficult. So when you make this kind of comparisons, there is a base effect to consider in. And that 75% was boosted by the COVID contracts. So not to say that 16% is great, but there is this consideration that must be taken off. Second, I read from a contractor, defense contractor, earnings release that the budget was enacted only on the 15th of March, the Department of Defense budget. Therefore, basically, new contracts coming from the Army were not there. So it's true, 16% is not amazing, but if you see the revenues from all the military contractors, like H3 Larry's, Lockheed Martin's, all the other guys, they were all flat or negative because they received the boost from last year and then they received less revenues now. And they even have negative free cash flow because it means that the government basically didn't pay them because they had an increase in receivables. And, in this situation, you would normally be scared. But here comes what Carp insisted on, the quality of government revenues. Because, government can be late, can have delays also on the budget. But in the end of the day, you know that the government is there and will pay you. So not to say the quarter was great. I would say it is not that bad as we think, probably.
One of the funniest things, I won't go into too much of it, but the government is the best customer, but it's also the worst customer. I've actually had to deal with this where we've had vendors basically hound us, be like, hey, when are you guys going to? So what happens is when you're working with the government, they make you sign these really archaic deals where they get almost like an unlimited amount of time to pay their bills before they're not unlimited, but it's a very long period of time. So when you provide a service, normally it's net 30 days. So within 30 days, you have to, you have to pay them. Otherwise, they put you on a credit hold. So when you have a credit hold, what happens is they won't provide you any more services. They won't provide you with any of the revenue. Any of the products that you were order for them. But Palantir can't do that. Palantir can't just say, well, guess what? Federal government, you didn't pay us this quarter, so we're going to shut Gotham off. Right. And that's why Sham, even during the thing, said, we're not going to stop doing business just because the paperwork wasn't there. Right. Remember, he said that So that should have clued people in to say, look, the government just hasn't sent the money to us. It's in the receivable side. Right. But it just hasn't made its way through the actual recording of the revenue yet. When it does get recorded, it'll be there again. The other thing is this Ukrainian thing happened at the latter half of the quarter, probably towards way at the end of the quarter. So a lot of that revenue, that additional revenue, is not there yet. But if you look at it, look at how much money was just appropriated to Ukraine by the Congress. $40 billion, right? That $40 billion, everyone's like, oh, the Ukrainians are getting $40 billion. No, the Ukrainians are not getting $40 billion. I would be surprised if they got even 10% of that money. Most of that is going to go towards all the defense contractors, all the agencies that support this war. So you're going to have companies like Palantir to say, hey, guess what? We need you to keep spying on the Russians and find out where their tanks are. Palantir, here's a service contract. Hey, Lockheed Martin, keep making all those Javelin missiles. Make as many Javelin missiles as you can and send them to Ukraine, right? So a lot of the appropriations that literally for this war just got approved now. So if you think about it, all those contracts are going to be coming in the next probably 6 to 9, maybe even 12 months. And that's not including any of the additional government revenue that Palantir could possibly pick up in 2023 from the Europeans, who are now probably saying, hey, get in here, Palantir, we need you. You know, I'm telling you, Palantir's hand in the Ukraine conflict is probably so there, but they can't come right out and say it. Now, the one thing that clued me into it was Carp 2 days before the DNI, which is the Director of National Intelligence, comes out and say, hey, Russia's might actually pose a nuclear threat. Do you know who did it? Carp said it 2 days before, you know, which kind of tells you like right there, like, wait a second, how does the CEO of a company know something even before the person who's got the hearing out there says it? Well, that means that guess what? Palantir is getting all that information. Palantir is probably processing all that information and even giving it to the decision makers on the Hill to say, here's all the data where all the Russian tanks are. Here's what Putin is doing with his nuclear missiles, that they're moving them closer to the border.
So what if they don't get government growth in extra quarters? What if it's like relatively flat? Does that totally change the thesis at that point?
I think it's going to be at least. I don't know how these contracts are going to be divvied up and when they're actually going to get paid out, right? If we don't see anything in the year, then there's some other question. Then it's like, wait a second, maybe there's something that we need to kind of take a step back at. But for me, I feel like within the next year, we're definitely going to see a lot of growth. And I think maybe they're kitchen sinking the government revenue a little bit this quarter and just getting it out the way. So next year in the same quarter, maybe you'll see another 70% rise in government revenue. Who knows?
All right.
I think you said properly 1 year time, because also from the calculations I made, it really takes at least 1 year to say, okay, you got the client, then you get a reasonable amount of revenues from that client. And already seeing after 2 years, if I say correctly, of government staying at 90 clients, getting 3 clients now is great. For sure, 3 clients will generate revenues, reasonable revenues in a year time. Because the problem with government maybe is that you start small, but when it can get big, it gets very big.
Yeah, and I just got pinged on Twitter. A person I used to know at VMware, very, very experienced salesperson, over 15 years of IT sales, worked in the Fed division for CDW, WWT, which is a phenomenal partner, and then last 5 years been at VMware. Now just moved to Palantir to be a new AE client exec for their healthcare division in DC. So they're going to start getting seasoned salespeople who know how to sell and then get them enabled on this tech. And I just don't think people are factoring that in. Like the people that are salespeople right now are mostly legacy people that worked at Palantir prior.
Yeah. Makes sense to me. I mean, that's kind of the idea, that they would be able to get that done. I want to share the screen one more time here. So that was the government stuff. Obviously, the 30% Revenue growth was awesome, right? This is government. Where's the regular one? This we have U.S. commercial 136. This was also phenomenal. Oh, in general they grew 31% year over year, right? But U.S. commercial 136, net dollar retention 124, and U.S. government 30%. I mean, these numbers are not horrible. 86% customer growth, 136% U.S. commercial. Their average revenue for top 20 customers. Like, did any of the numbers make you guys feel bad? Gross margin still at 80%. I know their adjusted operating margin is going to go down to 26%, but that's still decent, especially when you put up all the sales and marketing and SBC they have to give out. Did any of the numbers stick out that were particularly, you don't like those?
I want to just echo Sasha, because I think Sasha was right. Some of the ways that they presented this was a little off-putting, because it's like, dude, you already know. Stop making us do the mental gymnastics.
Yeah. That would be the biggest thing that was off-putting. And I mentioned in my video, and Tom and everyone I think mentioned it, was you had to do the mental math to figure out where the gaps were. And I just got concerning that it wasn't transparent. And that was honestly the only thing that was disturbing from the earnings was the transparency.
Do you think they were doing that for Wall Street? They were just kind of like scared of Wall Street to some extent?
No, Wall Street would have calculated in a heartbeat. Like we're simple YouTubers, and we figured it out.
Yeah,
Sasha
probably already had the numbers figured out as soon as it posted.
Yeah. Sasha was calling it out as it was happening, So just imagine. Yeah.
So why do you think they weren't transparent then?
That's what everyone.
This is what I really didn't find a proper answer. For instance, when you see the net dollar retention, I also wrote about it, that the net dollar retention is 124. So everyone is scared because it's lower compared with last quarter, which was 131. So, oh my God, they're keeping clients less. But the reality is that if you unpack it, you see that the government expanded 116%, but like full capacity of the revenues, because the new clients basically brought a new revenue. And if you do the calculations, it means that the commercial expanded 140%. So it was super positive, combined with the fact that contemporaneously they got a lot of new clients, especially in the US. So that is the key driver, in my opinion, and is working perfectly, especially where they have hired a lot of resources in terms of salespeople. The machine is working. How Palantir can grow exponentially, like having the combination of increasing number of clients, exploding clients. But they didn't want to mention the idea that, hey, customers in the commercial space didn't expand on average. They expanded much more than average because of the commercial retention was around 120 before. So this was a peak in terms of client expansions, but they didn't mention it. Probably because they didn't want to be forced to keep showing the metric. Otherwise, they would, if they didn't want to show the metric, they would be forced anyway. But still, I would have preferred they said those things and paid much more attention to explaining why certain things happen. Especially as a former analyst, I see that companies which are more appreciated are those who say, okay, the revenues went up for this reason, the margins compressed for this reason, while they said what happened, they didn't really explain why it happened, and that annoys a lot analysts because their job is to write what the company does, and what analysts do is taking that and add some comment on it, some color, they say. While here, the analyst is like, okay, what I'm going to write? I stick to the things I know for sure, which is SPAC losses, margin compression. I would say maybe there is some competition because it's always good to write.
Good
But
point.
there was no clear explanation. For instance, what I would have said, and this is my speculation, that the margin compressed because they needed to acquire a lot of new clients.
And as the SaaS business work is that you get a lot of clients, you incur into huge losses, and then you see the revenues in the coming quarters. Therefore, a margin compression is actually a good sign if combined with a ramp up in the number of clients. But if you don't explain that, first, we can only speculate, and analysts can't write that on paper because they risk the career if they write it and it's not true. So as an investor, and from what I saw, I believe that is the combination. Still, I want the company to at least hint, okay, if there is a margin compression due to the number increase in the market activity, explain that.
Mm-hmm. And also, guess what? You're working with these system integrators. You think they're doing it for free? You think Accenture is doing it for free? Saying, yeah, guess what? If they're selling your product for you, they're going to expect to get paid for it, which means you're going to have to sacrifice a few points in margin, guaranteed. But guess what? That opens you up to so many more clients with so many pre-existing conditions, right? Which is what you want. If you are at a point where you're trying to hyperscale, guess what? You need Accenture. You need these companies. You need Dom, which Dom, you should probably go to, Palantir and fucking show these guys how to sell some goddamn software, bro.
I've gotten so many messages on Twitter and LinkedIn about that. In fact, it was so weird. Today I got invited by Palantir to their newsletter thing. That's from them, and of course I accepted it. It was pretty funny. But one thing I do want to point out on the government concern, like, let's remember what their business model is. And it's one of the things that I'm so in love with and why this company is the acquire, expand, scale business model. It's not until the scale phase that they truly get those larger contracts and those contribution margins growing. So when you look at things like in that presentation, U.S. Space Force, Kobayashi Maru Software Factory built 13 operationally accepted applications on top of Foundry in months. Okay, in months. That's the key part. While sunsetting 100 million plus programs, $100 million worth of plus programs. That is reducing time to value. That is what every software company wants to do for their customer. If you can quantify reducing time to value and prove it that you've saved them that money, you will get those larger expansion contracts. And so when you look at slide 21, U.S. Space Force is delivering new operational capabilities to America's Space Guardians, all built on warp core. It's a weird word. Powered by Foundry, just like Airbus's, their whole Skywise, right? So you're starting to see, like, we know we're going to invest in space. We know the government's going to be there. Then they look at, now the very ambitious one was to become the 6th prime, the first software prime for the government. Hey, if you get that, we'll be good. But I'm not banking on those bold words. But then you also look, they got the UK Royal Navy, right? So yes, it was a $10 million contract. It's going to continue, and it was an expansion contract. So in the business model, the theory is you get to other parts of the business because your product is universal. And now that you've modularized Foundry, all of a sudden you can grow into the other modules for the business as well. I don't know.
Sorry for interrupting you.
Or Arnie.
Why do you think they didn't talk about that slide you liked about the consumption-based model? Because that is something Shyam talked about in the first quarter. It was an interview maybe with Morgan Stanley. But that after that, apart from the data mesh product, this consumption thinking was completely out of the radar. And the slide was there in the appendix. They didn't mention it all. Why?
There's a lot of questions, and that's the only unsettling thing in this being my largest position by far, is that there's certain things, if to Chris's point about running things like a business, I would want to be transparent about certain things. Like, I would want to share, okay, we're getting X amount of new people. Like when they said we got 40 customers, net new customers, what do they define as a new customer? Is it when they've gotten to the expand phase? Or is it immediately in the acquire phase? That's something
the acquire phase, from my understanding.
Okay, so the acquire phase. So when you look at like the usage billing model, I would want to highlight we are starting to get new customers on that. And if I have data to share around that, that is something that would allow smaller markets to get in there. The only thing I could think of is if they don't have the support on the back end to support too much customer growth, then you could have a customer support issue. And that's what you don't want.
The other thing is Sham, I feel like, is not the greatest communicator when it comes to explaining things. And he just goes right back into his tried and true, like, let me just philosophize just like Daddy Carp does, you know. Dude, you're the COO. No, don't do that. You know, like, you actually have to have answers for the questions that are being asked of you, especially when it comes to like the business aspects of it. Same thing with the CFO. You know, the one thing that always kind of like, I don't want to say irks me the wrong way, but you know, Sham doesn't have a business background either. He was one of their first 4 deployed engineers who they made into the COO, right? You would think that, hey, someone who's running the operations side of my organization or business would have some level of business qualifications, who's successfully been able to do things. That would be a good person to have. But, you know, like I said, a lot of the other complaints that I'm hearing from inside Palantir are that majority of the senior executives are only in their position because they've been with the company for so long, not really based on merit. You know, now, I don't know how you guys feel about that, but trust me, I've seen it in my organization where I've seen people pretty much in their position, not because they're good at it, but because they've actually been with the org for like 10, 20 years. And they're usually
around forever, though. I think with being a public company, eventually it has to shift.
Yeah, but at what expense? You know, how many years of underperformance do we need before the board? And guess what? This is not even a situation where a board can remove these people and say, hey, good, guess what? You're not doing your job. These are the people who have the super voting majority shares, right? Right now, Alex Carp can veto his own firing.
I'm fine with the executive leadership. I think they're fine. Like, I think it's just, like I said, we got to give them grace. It's only been not even 2 years. If they had been around publicly for 5 years and Foundry and all this, it'd be a different conversation. But I think in the next, 24 months from now, we're gonna be laughing about this conversation. It'll be fun to go archive and look back. But we know what we need to pay attention to, and just we're all committed in the community to stay on it.
Yeah. The one thing I do want to say, and it was in the slides, they actually highlighted YouTubers. I don't know if you guys saw that.
Yeah.
They actually put on there that
they should have just fucking mentioned us, bro. They should have just been like Amit, Chris, Dom, Arnie. These guys are legit. Sometimes I hate that they're so afraid to just like, because I know they work with the government and all this shit, but like be like Tesla a little bit, bro. Just like acknowledge the motherfuckers that are actually talking about you when your shit is trash right now. Like,
they are talking about Coach Trap, and they are talking about that developer community, which is what we've all been kind of telling them.
The problem is no one cares about the developer community because most people
everyone cares about the developer.
No, everyone cares.
No. The developers care about the developer community. The average people, the 185 people watching this, how many people watched the 46-minute tutorial they put out about Foundry? I can guarantee maybe like one person out of the 185 actually watched it. No, like here's the thing about the developer community. Let me say this very clear. No one gives a shit about it. The developers give a shit about it because they're going to evangelize it. The average people searching up Palantir on YouTube, which is what people do on Tesla to develop that real talk, they don't give a shit about a developer community.
I don't want them talking about me. I want them talking about the developers because talent is so hard to get across.
I disagree.
I want them saying, we have the best platform for developers. Come work with us.
Why can't they do both? Why can't do like... To me, you need to acknowledge the people that love you as a company that don't know anything about Python.
They thank their shareholders on every retail shareholders on every.
No, they do a bullshit job of thinking they're.
And Carp,
they do not treat us the way Elon treats his shareholders. That's what my point.
I mean, dude, they're actually giving you a voice. How many other public companies right now are even giving you the opportunity to ask a question in their earnings?
That is true.
No, wait, what are you talking about? Wait, hold on. So almost a majority of companies I see have partnered with Say Technologies, and they let retailers ask questions. Like the fact that they let retail shareholders ask questions that, by the way, they get to pick which questions they want to answer. It's all curated.
They asked my question.
You're happy to pick your question. No, my point. It's not that I think they're doing a good job. I just don't think they're doing a great job. Yes, Coach Rap is awesome, but again, at the end of the day, a lot of the content he makes, it's inaccessible to the majority of the masses. For the technical dweebs that really care about it, it's great. And that's who he's for, because those technical people that really care about it, they will be worth millions one day to Palantir. But people like us are not going to watch a 40-minute code.
He just wants a hug. He just wants some love.
Amit, you can have the next question, dude. When we all go to the say.com thing, we'll be like, Amit, I'm not going to ask a question. Amit, you ask a question. Jackson got a question in.
I want Sankar to be tweeting and actually look at this. Look at what I just found, right? I'm going to show you guys something on Twitter right now. I'm going to show you something on Twitter right now. Someone who barely tweets. And he's in the public eye, and you guys know him very well. He just tweeted today. Okay. Mr. Bezos, look at what he tweeted. Joe Biden, you want to bring down inflation? Let's make sure the wealthiest corporations pay their fair share. Bezos, the newly created disinformation board should review this tweet, or maybe they need to form a new non sequitur board instead. Raising corporate taxes is fine to discuss. Taming inflation is critical to discuss. Mushing them together is just misdirection. Now, regardless of what you think about that tweet, that is what we call a dunk, okay? That is a dunk on Twitter. Most people, or Bezos, doesn't do dunks ever. This guy is the most politically correct guy on the planet because he controls $1 trillion company, or he doesn't want to say anything that's mean. Now he's started dunking. I just feel like Sankar could do a little bit on Twitter and just be like an Arnie, at Amit, hey, awesome video. Hey, you explained the SPAC thing. Really, you can't do that. Even my guy,
I would say, do that. Some activity on Twitter would be nice to see. I loved seeing that they are making small videos on Twitter. For instance, I started sharing things on Palantir, especially sharing the 20-30 seconds clip. I would have liked to see them doing rather than the 3 minutes videos, because I would say the 3 minutes videos, unless you are passionate, you don't care of it. But if you have those 20 seconds, problem, how Palantir solves that problem, that is great. So I love seeing them going in that direction, but I also would like to see them generating some interactions, maybe with one person only related to that.
Bro, just have fun on Twitter. Stop being like a robot on Twitter. Tweet an emoji. You know what I'm saying? It's
Amit, let's just go to the meatpacking district, me and you, next weekend, and just show up to the headquarters. Be like, yo, we're here to see Carp. We're here to see Carp.
I know Carp can't be on Twitter because I know Palantir in general can't tweet because they have government.
Yeah, there's a lot of regulation. Yeah,
I get it, but
we are the evangelists now.
Yeah, but you guys could be you could have a social media person that acknowledges us, just like every company has hire some intern and they do the social media and they can be under tight regulation, but they can quote tweet some of our articles and shit. You know what I mean? It's just. I don't know. I don't think they give enough love to shareholders at all.
Robinhood has this girl related to crypto, which is very, very active.
Really? What's her name?
Yeah, Brown, I think.
Wait, what's the point of this crypto girl? Why'd you bring her up?
Because this girl, Christina Brown.
It's kind of like how Elon always reaches out to. What's his name? There's a few YouTubers that Elon always talks to, invites to things.
Yes.
So is that what you want, Amit? Are you trying to be that guy for Palantir? I'll write a letter, bro. I'll write a letter to Carp. Let's make this happen. Let's get Amit in front of Carp.
I'm not trying to be an attention whore or anything. I'm just genuinely saying the love that we give this company in terms of the content we make, I do not feel that reciprocated at all. I'm being very honest. I see it reciprocated against
which is all great. The people that are on the comments right here just still going at it while we're rambling.
Well, I'm definitely out. I just badmouth Carp being like, oh, he doesn't know how to run his business. So I'm definitely not getting an invite to the Christmas party. Maybe Amit, I could be your +1 and we could go, bro.
It's not even about positive coverage. It's just bro, I don't know, man. Bro, even the earnings call, it was just it felt so pre-recorded and robotic. Again, I totally agree with Sasha in terms of the presentation. It just wasn't it wasn't doing it for me. Not on this one. The full year earnings call was. Why can't every earnings call be live like that? Why can't they do it live every time like that?
Yeah, because he keeps dropping F-bombs.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
That's probably what happened. He dropped the F-bomb. Palantir
that's an execution risk.
Yeah. You can't send Carp in not pre-recorded. You go and drop some F-bombs on it. Dude, you could tell the investor relations lady in the back was probably please God, no more. And
Ryan
it still has.
Ryan
it still hasn't been. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Chris. Go ahead.
No, I said it still hasn't been proven that Kathy Wood sold off because he swore. Literally, I still think that Kathy Wood sold Palantir, not because this government nonsense slowed down. I think she was like, no, I believe in Jesus, and Jesus said you can't curse. And you know what? I can't be invested in a company where the CEO is cursing about their product. And that's why she sold everything. Dude, you know that she started ARC because Jesus told her to, right? I don't know if you know that, but it's true.
I found it weird, but yeah, I like the perspective.
As per my dream, she said DataWalk is going to eat their lunch, so I still think that's why she sold them off. Ryan tweeted at me. He tweeted Shanker and Palantir. Amit feels he needs more recognition. Please shout him out so he's not sad anymore. Let's go to Shankar's Twitter page, bro. I'm about to go to this guy's Twitter page.
Oh gosh.
No,
What
but
does this guy
seriously,
really be tweeting about, bro?
Bro, let's just show up at his penthouse, bro. I know where he lives. Let's go. Let's
Look at
make
this.
this happen, bro.
All right, COO Palantir Tech, and they got this stupid link in the bio. Like, bro, come on, bro. Like, all right. When is he last tweet? Look at this. He hasn't even tweeted anything, bro. He's just be retweeting stuff. Last thing he tweeted was December 2021, bro. Come on. Like, I'm just saying, I'm not saying I want a COO who's tweeting all day. I'm just saying you could do a little bit more to acknowledge the community. Is that too much to ask? That's not crazy.
You need to hire Amit. He'll run your Twitter page like there's no tomorrow.
This is a job interview for Amit right now,
yeah.
Bro.
Amit, do you know?
I ran their Twitter page, they would fire me so fast. They would.
Dude, no. Look at Wendy's. Look at Wendy's Twitter. Dude,
yeah,
Wendy's Twitter
can't
flames
do that,
everyone.
Right? Just, yeah.
Well, we can end it on this. I think we were all right about Faraday Future. Turns out they just had earnings. And they missed very badly by $1.06 earnings per share negative.
Yeah, they're probably.
And, they had $666 million in September of 2021. Now they only have $276 million, and they also have a repayment of owing another 97. So cash burn is important to watch. That is always a good metric to make sure you watch there. For all the investments you have.
Last thing,
I want to be a part of this every Friday, man. You guys do it at night, which is great because my kids are in bed, my wife's asleep. Like, I'm game.
Yeah, come on, man. Every 11 p.m. every Friday, we're here. One thing is Ray Dalio's fund, Bridgewater Associates. They put out they have a $500,000 share, $7 million share position in Palantir that came out today. I think they probably did that within the last couple of weeks. Hopefully they didn't sell it off over the past couple of weeks as well. But that's cool.
It's interesting
Ray
because you know that Bridgewater was one of the early clients of Palantir, probably for the Palantir Finance.
Right.
Did they stick with them?
Well, Palantir Finance isn't around anymore.
No. Did they stick with Palantir in general?
Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah, we could assume no because there's been no leakings of it, but theoretically, we don't know Palantir's customer base. So I mean, All right, good stuff, guys. Hour 30 minutes. This was awesome. 167 people. Everyone's stuff is in the chat or in the description. Dom's channel, Chris's channel. I put Arnie's Twitter. Please follow all of them. Check them out. Great content on Palantir and investing in general. And yeah, we'll see you guys next week.
See you guys.
See you.
Bye.
Later.
Thank you, guys.